this is where NXT is a false positive and it needs to be fixed. They come up from NXT thinking they're over, and then they just don't have any improvement when they come in there.
Ackerman Razor, the authors of Pain, and I don't even know why they were brought back. I mean, they did nothing on the main. I didn't see them in NXT, I'll grant you that, but they didn't do anything on the main roster in both of their stints, because they were fired in 2020, budget cuts, COVID, brought back in 2022, and then they were put with Paul Ellering actually came with them this time, and they were put with Karrion Kross and Scarlett. I mean, that was always Timu Judgment Day anyway, and they never did anything with them. And then space on. What do you think about them? But I always just found them they were just taking up space on the roster. They were just people.
I found this is the false positive of the NXT experience. You're over in NXT because the crowd is wanting everybody to get over. That's the way it's been there for a while. So Authors of Pain, dare I say it, I think Ascension should have done a lot better than Authors of Pain. Ascension had that NXT type of, the fans were behind them, but they got pigeonholed into saying they were better than the Road Warriors in their first promo, and like literally, and I feel like this here, that's why I said that about Ascension. They were a very talented tag team. They deserved more. The AOP was very lateral, or they regressed as time went on. They got worse. They seemed like very uncoordinated. They didn't seem safe either. Like we talked about finishes, like the Shaker Heights spike from way back. If you didn't see that clip. The Collider, you run these two guys across, which, by the way, held my breath every time, made me think of D'Lo and Draws. You're running them across, and their backs are hitting, and then you're giving them a regular powerbomb. And then there were other moves they did that were just not safe. You do them in the locals is one thing, but once again, just like the Beverly Brothers, the main roster guys are looking at that going, I'm not taking that. You're not powerbombing that other guy on top of me. You're not doing this. And, even their finish with it was like, he spoke about Perry Saturn. Their finish was like a weak version of Total Elimination with the clothesline, the playground thing. You could take the legs and do this. Even when, who did it? The Midnight Express did it out of the corners and it looked really good. Remember the high-low with the clothesline? But they definitely, this is where NXT is a false positive and it needs to be fixed. And I don't know if it ever will be, but they come up from NXT thinking they're over, and then they just don't have any improvement when they come in there. And the second time around when they brought him back, I think it hurt Karrion Kross and his act because, like you said, Judgment Day, Timu or Alibaba Judgment Day, and Karrion Kross is a loner, Killer Kross more specifically, if I'm looking at the past, is a loner. He has the woman with him, but truly he's a loner. He's one of those people that's mythical, but then you put him in the right to censor leader type of thing, cutting the pro. It just didn't make sense.
With Karrion Kross is its own interesting thing, because I didn't like his character when he came back. I thought it was... They put all the production values in someone like Bray Wyatt for that, but then for Karrion Kross, they might do a bit of a weird filter, and it just looked like, well, you film this in 2 minutes in the backstage and you put a filter on it, and it looked like what it was. It always looked like a cheap version. And with Karrion Kross, this isn't about Karrion, we'll skip him because I'm going to go to Paul Ellering in a second. Karrion Kross shows more personality sat in his hotel room filming skits than he does on TV. And I almost wonder if he's the same as Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. He's one of those guys who struggles to get his true personality onto the big screen, like a Brad Armstrong, who would be the archetypal sort of example of that. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we want to go to Paul Ellering here now, because through my research, I found out he's been released by WWE no less than 4 times. And you wouldn't even think he was there 4 times, but he was with the Road Warriors for a few months, with Rocco, the dummy. Then he was with the DOA in 98. That's one of the forgotten people that was during the Attitude Era. And 2 different Authors of Pain stints as well. But when they went to the main roster, AOP, the first time, Paul Ellering, if you remember, came to the entrance ramp with them, and basically AOP just shooed him away. And that was his entire main roster run.
And then with Seth Rollins
he's still a great
after that, right?
Yeah. He's 70, or near enough there at the time. He was after Dutch Mantel, Zeb Coulter, the oldest hire that WWE ever did. And he's still a good talker. He still looks good. He looks TV good. He's an interesting face and, a great voice and everything. Why never use him? Why put him in a group where he's the sixth most important person in it? Or fifth?
It's a strange thing because Paul Ellering is probably, in my estimation, the most underrated manager ever in wrestling history as far as all those things. And he's a very unique guy from what I hear. I don't know if it's true or not. Could be urban legend about him running the Iditarod, the dog sled racing stuff. He has interesting hobbies and habits outside of wrestling that make him a very interesting person. I would like to sit down and talk to. You should interview him. That would be an amazing interview, probably, of that urban legend and other things people say about Paul Ellering. He's got to have an incredible mind for the business by default at this point, with all the years that he's experienced and all the talent that he has probably helped out throughout the years. Not to mention, back in the day, wasn't he another kind of Billy Graham-like look to him as a wrestler? He had longer blonde hair. He was jacked. He was a power lifter. He's a guy at 70. It looks better than us at our age. But there's got to be something this is a guy that should have been an agent. Maybe they did offer him something like that. And he just wanted to come in as talent and go home and not have the stress of any of the office stuff. But yeah, Paul Ellering should be somebody. I put him on for what I've heard of Paul Ellering and his mind for the business and the way he could talk and coach and convey things. Would you put him right up there? Because I think I'd put him right up there with a Kevin Sullivan. Even though he doesn't have the booking experience, he's just somebody that's seen it all and can convey a lot of knowledge.
Paul Ellering, as a manager, he's always one of those guys who obviously has bigger guys around him. And, with the newspaper, he's the kind of person who just goes, there's your enemy, sick him. And I was like that kind of manager. But also in real life, especially with the Road Warriors, he was their manager. He managed their lives. He managed their bookings, their flights, and especially Hawks. He made sure they got from A to B. So he was a true manager in that respect as well. He started in 1977 in... Where did he start? Was it the AWA? Yeah, so Minnesota.
He's a Minnesota guy, yeah.
He started in the Vern Gagne camps in 1977.
Yeah, he's a true Vern Gagne guy, which you can see what Minnesota produced, especially when it came to WWF at the time and then WWE. This is Kurt Hennig, Scott Hall, who else? Well, Colonel De Beers, that watch-along is up there. He didn't go to WWF, though. But just about everybody, Gene Okerlund, everybody in the 80s of WWF were taken from AWA for the most part. AWA had a lot of people that came over.